Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dishing with Stephanie's Dish, the podcast where we talk to fun people in the food space. And sometimes they have cookbooks. And today's author is an author. He's an author of great magnitude, Hank Shaw. His new book is Borderlands Recipes and Stories from the Rio Grande to the Pacific. And Hank, you are such a prolific, beautiful writer. This book, I feel like, is just so you. Do you love it?
It's been a long journey to make this book, and I'm pretty proud of it. And it's been probably the biggest project of my adult life in terms of time, commitment, travel, really unlocking understanding of things that I thought I knew but didn't necessarily know until I got there. And it's just been this crazy, fantastic journey and a journey that you can eat.
Can you talk a little bit about your history? Like, I think many people know you as the hunter, forager, gatherer type, and Borderlands obviously has a lot of those elements to it. But can you just walk readers that or listeners that might be new to your journey kind of through how you got here?
Sure. I many years ago when I was still fairly young, I was a restaurant cook. So I worked first as a dishwasher and then as a line cook and then as a sous chef in a series of restaurants, mostly in Madison, Wisconsin. And I left that job to be a newspaper reporter. And I ended up being a newspaper reporter for 18 years. And, I cooked all throughout that and, traveled and learned more about food and did fishing and hunting and foraging and such. And then I left the news business in 2010 to do my website, which is Hunter, Angler, Gardener, Cook. And I've been doing that full time since 2010. So, yeah, my entire kind of current incarnation is wild foods, but Borderlands is kind of an outgrowth of that for two reasons. The first is I've basically written all of the fish and game books you can possibly write already. I've got one for every kind of quarry you can imagine.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was, oh, well, a lot of that travel for those other books was on the border on both sides, on the American side and on the Mexican side. And that kind of grew into this, wow, God, the food is so great. And God, this area is just so neglected, I think, by most, the foodерati, for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
because all of like everybody seems to love to hate Tex-Mex without really fully knowing what Tex-Mex actually is. And people say that the Southwestern cooking is so very 1987, and the people who know Mexico are like, oh, all the good foods in Oaxaca or Michoacan or Mexico City or Yucatan, and really that's not the case. And as over and over and over again, I was discovering these amazing just finds, and a lot of them had to do with wild foods, but not all of them. And so that Borderlands became my um, diary of that journey.
And quite a diary it is. What's interesting to me is I didn't actually ever know that you were in the newspaper business. And that
I'm a
makes sense.
Pioneer Press graduate.
Oh,
I
you
worked for the
were?
I
How
worked
did
for
I
the
not know this? Yeah.
I was a St. Paul Pioneer Press investigative reporter from 2002 to 2004. And if you're of a certain age and you remember that there was a big story about some Republican operatives getting involved in a telecommunications boondoggle. And yeah, that was us. That was our story.
Funny. Well, and it makes sense because the book is so like it's the storytelling that's so good. And cookbooks are cookbooks with beautiful recipes and different people's point of view on recipes. But what I love about your book too is it really goes into ingredients a little more in depth. It tells the story of the terroir of where the recipe's from and why it's the way it is. And it makes sense now to me that you're a journalist because it's so beautifully written.
I really appreciate that. I mean, I tried in this particular book. There are essays in all of my books, but in this particular one, I really wanted people from the rest of the country to get a flavor of what it's like to was really honest to God like on the border. Everybody has thoughts and opinions about immigration and about the border and about blah blah blah. And it's like, well, how much time have you actually spent on the border? Do you actually know what it feels like, what it smells like, what it tastes like? And chances are you probably don't. And I really wanted this book to shine a light on that in ways that go well beyond food.
When we talk about the borderlands, can you talk about it without talking about immigration and the close connection between the United States and Mexico? I mean, we share this border. People have this idea that it's like this gated, fenced situation, and really, there's tons of the border that's just you'd only know it was a border if someone told you you were crossing it.
It's very true. In fact, one of my favorite moments to that was in Southwest Texas. There's a beautiful national park called Big Bend. It's one of the biggest national parks in the country. It's famous. It's amazing. But you are going to drive and hike and hike and drive and hike and drive. It's a gigantic park. So one place that you can go to, and it's actually if you open up a copy of Borderlands and you see this huge vista right at the beginning of the book. There's this huge vista, and it's on a cliff. That is exactly it. That is that is Big Bend National Park. And if you're looking right in the back end of that, back center, a little to the left, you'll see a canyon in the background. And that canyon is St. Helena Canyon. And St. Helena Canyon is created by the Rio Grande. So you can go to that park and you can walk across the border, literally to Mexico, and not have the Rio Grande come up over your ankles. And there's Mexicans on their side, there's Americans on our side, and everybody's crossing back and forth, and their families are there and having a fun time, blah blah blah. And it's one of these great moments where it shows you that yeah, that border is really just sort of a fiction.
Yeah, yes, in many ways, right? Figuratively, and also, I don't know, we seem to be in a global food economy, whether we want to or not. Um, when you look at the individual ingredients that you're using here in Borderlands, obviously there's very different things because of temperature in Mexico than you might have here in the Midwest, but is it really different from like, say, Texas to Mexico?
In yes, there are definitely different. So the food you'll get in Nuevo León or Coahuila or Tamaulipas, which are the three Mexican states that border Texas, is going to be different from what you would think about as Texas food. However, on the borderlands, that change really is minimal. And I talk about in the book the idea of fronterizos, people who are neither fully Mexican nor fully American. They're border people, and they can slide between English and Spanish in mid clause. And it's really the pocho or Spanglish or whatever you want to call it that you'll hear there is very different from what you'll hear from a bilingual person from, say, Mexico City, where typically those people will speak in full sentences or paragraphs in one language and then maybe switch to another language in the next sentence or paragraph. Well, on the border, it's a mishmash. So the structure, the words, the adjectives, like it's everything is like, my pinche watch is not no funciona, and so it's like this whole kind of amalgam of what's going on, and that kind of translates into the food where you've got some Texas, some very Texas things that don't cross the border, like yellow cheese doesn't really cross the border.
Right.
Um, the idea of um, like Rotel queso. So it's like Velveeta cheese melted with Rotel. That's queso. That's the bad queso in North Texas. Like you'll get that in like Amarillo. But the real queso is south of Interstate 10, and that is a white Mexican cheese that it where you get roasted fire roasted green chilies folded into it and a little bit of Mexican oregano and salt and a little bit of crema to thin it out, and it is to the Rotel queso what a match is to the sun.
Yum.
And I mean, that said, I'm not going to poop all over the Velveeta one because that, while I don't think it tastes great, what I realize is that particular version of queso, which I personally don't like, is really heavy with cultural significance.
Yeah.
And so there's a place for it. It's just not. That's not really as border food as you might think. That's a little bit more North Texas. And that's an example of where things don't cross. But a really great example of where things are damn near the same is Arizona and Sonora. So that there's almost no difference between Arizona Mexican food and Sonora Mexican food because they're one and the same. The burritos are pretty similar. The flour tortillas are similar. The carne asada is pretty similar. Um, and so that's a case where the border's really, I mean, yes, it's a border, but I mean, it's like it's there's no food border. The same thing with Southern California and Tijuana and Northern Baja. There's almost no functional difference between the two of them. Now, New Mexico and Chihuahua has a difference, and like north of Interstate 10 in Texas and the border in Texas are quite different.
Um, there's a recipe in here that I didn't even really know existed called parisa.
Oh yeah.
And we will order steak tartare or make tartare. And I didn't realize that there was in many cultures, you sort of see similar foods or similar food groups, and they're just treated differently with herbs or spices. This looks delicious.
It really is. It's the best way to describe it if you're not familiar because it's super regional in Texas. Like you can't even really get parisa in Dallas or in El Paso. It's not a thing there. It's sort of a South Central Texas thing. But the best way I can describe it is really to accurately describe it. It is steak tartare meets aguachile because most people will say it's steak tartare meets ceviche, and yes, you absolutely can get it like that, but the acidity in the citrus will turn the raw beef gray, which I think looks gross.
Yeah.
I mean, it tastes fine, but it just kind of looks like meh. So my recipe and what I do is I mix the steak tartare with the essentially pico de gallo is really what it's being mixed with, and a little bit of cheese. I'll mix it and serve it right away, so that when you eat it, the meat is still pink.
Yeah, it looks really good. And then also in the book, so you're a hunter, obviously, we established that. But in many of these recipes, you have substitutions of different animal proteins that can be used. So whether it's elk or bison or sheep or duck, I think that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think I started that process. It's done with icons. So if you look at a recipe for, oh, there's a stew that's very popular there called puchero. And
I'm just going to
puchero
that page, so I'll.
So, oh, that's asado de puerco. So asado de puerco is always pork, but like no babies will die if you use something else from that, but that is traditionally a pork dish. Puchero is traditionally beef or venison, but really, you're going to be fine if you put damn near anything in it. It's a big giant stew with a lot of vegetables, and it's fantastic. And to really make the book more versatile, because there's two things that I always do in my books. Number one is I'm going to give you the recipe as faithfully as I can to what it actually is wherever it's from. And then I'm going to give you all these substitutions so that if you live in, you know, Bismarck or Crookston or, rural Iowa, you're going to be able to make it. And that's important to me because it's more important to me that you make some version of it than to be exactly proper and specific. I hate cookbooks where it's like, especially with cheese, where you'll see someone be like, it must be the, Cowgirl Creamery Point Raised Blue from 2012. Otherwise,
Yes.
this recipe won't work. I'm like, come on, guys, this is a stupid recipe. Like, it's blue cheese. It'll be fine.
I was surprised that you have a chimichanga in the book. Can we talk about chimichangas? Because people that
Sure.
grew up in the Midwest, Chi-Chi's was like the first Mexican restaurant besides El Burrito Mercado. And El Burrito Mercado was authentic, and Chi-Chi's was like the Americanized, what they thought Mexican food was. Which
Hmm.
also, I will say, I have taste memories of Chi-Chi's. I say this not dogging on them, and they're actually coming back. And the chimichanga is something that, like, if I actually go to the new restaurant, which I'm sure I will order a chimichanga. It's like a taste memory for me. What is the like origination of chimichanga?
It's shrouded in mystery. Um, so there's a couple different theories, and then I'll tell you what I think. The general story is that a woman was making burritos in Arizona and either dropped, which I don't believe because that would create a splash that would, send 350-degree oil everywhere, or placed a burrito in the deep fryer. And the legend, which I don't believe this is true at all, is she drops the burrito in the deep fryer and you know says something like chinga tu madre or whatever, like just like swears something bad, and um, but then sort of does what you would do in a kind of a mom situation. And if you, instead of saying the F word, you would say, oh, fudge. And so she goes, oh, chimichanga, and which is sort of vaguely reminiscent of some Mexican swear words. And so thus the dish was born. But I think that's not true because there is a fantastic resource. Actually, I mean, I found it in some of my older Mexican cookbooks that I own, but there's a fantastic research at the University of Texas at San Antonio of Mexican cookbooks. And some of these Mexican cookbooks are handwritten from the 1800s, and so they're all digitized, and you can study them. And so there's a thing in Sonora. Remember, I just got done saying that like there's
Yep.
almost no difference between Sonora and Arizona. Um, there's a thing from Sonora many, 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 many years ago, early 1900s, for a chimichanga, Chivicanga. So a
Okay.
chimichanga, and it's the same thing. So I'm convinced that this is just a thing because if you have a burrito and you fry things, there's zero chance that at some point you're gonna be like, I wonder if it's gonna be good if I fry the burrito. Like answer yes.
Yes, all the time.
And so I like you came into the chimichanga world as thinking with a definite eyebrow raise, like what is this? And when it's done right, and if you see the picture in my book, it is dressed with a whole bunch of things on the outside of the burrito. So it's crema, it's a pico de gallo, it's shredded lettuce or cabbage, limes. The thing about a properly served chimichanga is that you have to eat it as a whole because the chimichanga itself is quite heavy. It's a fried burrito with like rice
Yeah,
and beans and meat inside it. Like it's a gut bomb. But when you eat it with all these light things around it that are bright and fresh and acidic, it completely changes the eating experience. And I was sold.
I can imagine. The one you have in the book looks really good. I keep asking about specific recipes, but there were like some that just jumped out at me, like, wow. Another one that jumped out at me was from that same chapter about the acorn cookies.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been under the impression that acorns, and maybe it's from just specific to the oaks, but that they're poisonous. I didn't think about making acorn flour.
So number one, no acorns are poisonous. Zero. Period. End of story. It's a myth. You were lied to. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean
Acorn.
it helps me because my dog eats them.
I mean, acorns have been a source of food for human beings forever. All the way, I don't know how long ago, but way more than 10,000 years. Way more.
Okay.
So, what the myth comes from is most acorn varieties, so most, especially red oaks, are full of tannins. And tannins are not poisonous. Tannins are not toxic. Tannins will make you constipated if you eat too many of them. And I suppose it would be possible to poison yourself with tannins, but I mean, good luck.
Yeah,
Good luck eating enough of that astringent stuff to be able to get yourself poisoned. But tannins are water soluble. So for millennia, the people who eat acorns, and especially in Northern California, where acorns were their main starch, the idea of leaching the tannins out in a stream or wherever is as old as time. And so you make a meal. It's really a meal is probably a better way to put it. I call it flour, but there's no real gluten in it. In fact, there's no gluten in it, but there is some starch in it that will help the flour stick to itself. So that's true everywhere. In fact, it's a very good acorn year here in Minnesota this year, and I found some bur oaks in a place that I'm going to go back and harvest them to make some more acorn flour this year. And I'll have to leach them here, but this is a very long walk up to this cookie recipe because in South Arizona and in Sonora, there's an oak called an emery oak, and the emery oak is in the white oak. It's in the white oak clan, and it is sweet in the sense that you can roast those acorns and eat them. And in fact, you
Oh,
can get roasted acorns as a snack on some of the reservations down there, or really wherever. I mean, it's a thing. Like they could just roast the acorns,
yeah,
and
like
then
a
you could grind
chestnut.
them. And yeah, it's just like a chestnut. Very good. That's exactly with it, because it's the same kind of a texture as well. Um, and so that particular oak is unique in North America. The cork oak in Europe is the other one that doesn't have any tannins to it. So you can just sit there and eat them, and that's why they make flour out of them. It's an indigenous thing. It's You don't really see it too much among the Hispanic Sonorans. You see it a lot more with like Yaqui or Pima or Tono Odom, those indigenous groups.
It's so cool. Um, I also subscribe to your Substack, which I would encourage people to subscribe.
To the
And
bone.
yes, To the Bone, it's called. And you just had a post about herbs and how important herbs are in your cooking and in your yard. And I know that you have kind of a small St. Paul yard because we've talked about it. What are you doing with your herbs now that we're at the end of the season? Do you have anything that's special that you do with them? Do you dry them? Do you mix them with salt?
I do all of the above. I am a preservation fanatic. I could talk for hours just about various ways to preserve things for our Minnesota winters. Maybe that's another podcast.
For sure.
But the short version is yes, all of the things. I mostly will do things like make pesto with basil because I love pesto, but
Yep.
I do dry some, and there are tricks to drying herbs. The trick is low heat for a long time. So the don't use your oven and try to get them dry within 48 hours, but also try to do it at less than 110 degrees
So
because otherwise they turn brown.
do you use like a dehydrator then or
Yes, I use a dehydrator. And most herbs dry really well. In fact, many herbs are better dried because it concentrates their flavor. Basil's iffy. Parsley's kind of terrible dried.
agreed?
Parsley's one of those ones where eat it fresh, make pesto. I suppose you could freeze it. I will gather big scabs of it because I grow a lot, and I will freeze it. And even though it's going to suffer in the freezer, it is one of the most vital things I use for making stocks and broths with the game I bring home. So freezing, drying, uh, I just mixed a whole bunch of lovage with salt.
Hmm.
So you go 50-50 the herb and coarse salt. Um, like ice cream salt almost. And then you buzz that into a food processor or a blender. And then that creates a much finer, kind of almost a wet salt that has an enormous amount of flavor. And if you freeze it, it'll stay bright green the whole winter. And sometimes I like to do that, but the other times I kind of like to see it and progress over the months. And it's kind of a beautiful thing to see that herb salt kind of brown out and army green out as we get to like late February, because it really is sort of also indicative of our harsh winters, and it feels a little bit more of the time and place than pulling something out of a freezer.
Yeah. So let's talk about that because you're a single man. You are a recipe writer and developer, so you're also cooking and testing recipes. You're preserving all these things. I
Hmm.
mean, my freezer right now is kind of a hellscape. I just closed up my summer cabin and I came home with so much food. I have like canned and pickled and preserved, and I just literally feel overwhelmed by all of the food in my home right now. And I realize this is a real first world problem. So, my daughter's kind of in her young 20s and sort of poor, so I've loaded her up with stuff. But do you just feel overwhelmed sometimes by all of the abundance of food?
Absolutely. It's one of the things that's been really remarkable about it, about sort of single life, is um, how less I need to hunt or fish. So I find myself, I mean, because, so side note, backstory, I don't buy meat or fish at all. I occasionally will buy a little bit of bacon because I love bacon, and I'll
Yeah.
occasionally buy pork fat to make sausages with game, but that's it. Um, so if I'm eating red meat, it's going to be venison. If I'm eating white meat, it's probably going to be grouse or pheasants. If I'm eating fish, I've caught it. And so that's what I find is that I don't eat that much meat anymore. Like I eat plenty, but I mean, it's not like I don't gorge myself on giant steaks anymore. And it's just me. So a limit of walleyes can last me a month. And before it was definitely not like that. And so, yes, I can feel the overwhelm, but I have neighbors that I give things to. I have
Mhm.
friends that I give things to. Like I had two deer tags last year and I shot the second deer because I had a whole bunch of friends who didn't get a deer and needed venison. So it was really cool to be able to give I butchered it all and I gave them an all vacuum seal. It was like all ready to go. And that was really satisfying to be able to help people like that. And then, I like, have a dinner party here and
Yeah, I want to come to a dinner party, not to invite myself, but please
there.
I'll reciprocate in the I have a cabin in the summer, so I'm sort of like between here and there. But once the
Okay.
sun sets in, I really like to entertain and have people over. I find that it's a really easy way to gather new people too. Like I like
Mm.
collecting people because I just think people are so amazing. And I love putting like new people at the table that people don't know yet or making those connections. I think I'm actually kind of good at it. So I can't wait to have you over this fall.
Yeah, likewise. We'll do a home and home.
Yes, I would love that very much. Your book is available, Borderlands, on, I found it because obviously you sent me a copy, but also it's on Amazon and you self-publish. So there's a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are cookbook writers themselves, or
Hmm.
people that maybe are trying to get published or find publishing. Can you speak to that a little bit and why that's been your route? You've been doing this a long time.
Yeah, this is my fourth self-published book, and self-published is really kind of a misnomer in a way because the books that I put out are of Random House quality. Like they're,
For
you know,
sure.
there's no way you're going to be able to tell this book is apart from a gigantic publishing house because what I
Confirmed.
ended up doing is creating a publishing company. So the books are published in big, big runs in at Versa Press in Illinois. I'm very happy to say that these books are entirely made in America.
Hmm.
And that's kind of important to me because most cookbooks are made in China and not a fan. So the books are printed in Illinois and they are stored and shipped at a warehouse in Michigan. So the best ways to get the books are to either buy them from my website or buy them from Amazon. And those are probably your two best avenues for it. Um, the thing about self-publishing, if you want to do it at the level that I'm doing it, which is to say, make a book that even a snooty Random House person would be like, "Damn, that's a good book." Um, you have to go big, and it's not cheap. So I don't ever do runs less than 5,000, and a typical run for me is between 10 and 15,000, and because your unit costs go way way down,
Right.
and we can get in the weeds of it, but I have some advantages in the sense that my sister has designed books for a living for 30 some odd years, and her husband has edited books for 30 some odd years.
Oh, so you got like the
And
family business going.
yeah, and my ex does most of the photos. Like this is Borderlands is the first book where the majority of the photos are mine.
They're nice.
um but even she photo edited this book, and so like I have people with very good skills. And so what I would say is if you have a kitchen cabinet where you have people who have those skills, and I have to kind of stress that, for example, copy editing or proofreading or indexing a book are entirely different from copy editing or proofreading something in business. It's just not the same skill. And I found that out. So um, if you have that ability to put together a dream team, then you can make a really, really beautiful book that will impress people and that you will actually love. The print on demand system is still not good enough for cookbooks. It's
Okay.
fantastic for like a memoir or something without a lot of pictures, but it is not good for cookbooks still.
All right, I'm just making notes here because people ask me questions about this all the time. Um, all right, well, I appreciate that you've done all this work and the book is beautiful. And
Thank
I just
you.
love talking to you about food. So hopefully we can call you again and just wrap it down.
Yeah, let's talk about preservation. I'd
Yeah,
love to.
because I've never met anyone that only was eating what they killed.
Well, you could go
Pretty
up north. I bet
remarkable.
you'd find more people who do, but
Yes, yes. And I find that to be fascinating. And also just the idea of preserving food and how you use what you preserve. So yeah, that's a great topic to get into at a later date. The book is Borderlands. I'm talking with Hank Shaw, recipes and stories from the Rio Grande to the Pacific. You can find it at Amazon or at his website. I always say this one wrong. Hunt, gather,
cook.
cook.
So,
Oh,
so the best way to get to my website is just go to huntgathercook.com.
okay. And you have lots of recipes there too. I want people to just explore
Thousands.
your website. Yeah, it's incredible the amount of recipes that you have there. And, if you think about protein as being interchangeable in a lot of these instances, it's definitely a really well done website with tons of recipes. So thanks for your time today, Hank. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me
Okay,
on.
we'll talk soon. Bye bye.
Bye.